Well, ladies and gentlemen, on this very blustery day, a very warm welcome to Master Investors Healthcare webinar. My name is Sarah Lowther, and in the next hour, I'm confident that we'll learn that the winds of change are blowing in a favourable direction towards the UK healthcare sector. Now, you're going to hear the wisdom and the vision of one expert speaker and two excellent companies, hVIVO and Poolbeg Pharma. So now is a good time. Is it a good time to turn your attention to healthcare, particularly as there is a pharmaceutical patent cliff, which is something that you will be learning about? Is it a now investment or a long-term store of value? Now, this is an interactive webinar, so if you have any questions that you'd like me to ask on behalf of you, please put them in the chat feature and I'll endeavour to get through as many as possible. So what is that patent cliff? Our first speaker will enlighten you. It's Niall Pearson, who's head of corporate broking and sales at Hybridan, which is a small cap broker and corporate finance firm at the heart of the UK's small and medium enterprise ecosystem. Niall, I shall hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I'm just waiting for the slides, if they could be brought up, please. Brilliant. And good afternoon, everyone. So thank you for that introduction, Sarah. So my name is Niall Pearson. I'm a director and head of corporate broking and sales at Hybridan. Very much looking forward to just giving an overview in terms of our thoughts of what's going on in the healthcare sector right now and the current investor sentiment. Next slide, please. So just to give some very brief overview about us, who, for those that don't know us, we are corporate brokers. So we specialize in raising money and awareness for exciting growth companies across a range of sectors and markets, covering the private market, AIM, Aquis, and the main market as well. And you can see our core offering across those 6 areas of focus. Next slide, please. So I thought it'd be a good idea just to start, where are we now? And I think to discuss the current sentiment of the current healthcare sector, we need to put that in context. And forgive me for still rattling on about COVID. I know we're all sick of it, but when you look at some of the valuation disparities that are currently occurring on market, it's really as a result from COVID. And what I mean by that is, with any thematic piece that happens in small caps, this is not restricted to healthcare. It's just that healthcare's thematic piece so happened to be the COVID-19 pandemic. But wider than healthcare, it's anything from blockchain, quantum computing, cybersecurity. It's been going on like that for a number of years. So it's very difficult because, unfortunately, you do get a lot of opportunistic companies come out there who perhaps, and I'll be a tad facetious, perhaps didn't really have a core strength offering in their biotech portfolio. Looking at COVID, for example, had a number of years looking at arthritis or anything in the central nervous system, and suddenly put COVID in their RNS, the shares went up 500%, rather than when we actually unpicked COVID-19 and looked about what was happening in someone's body, and looking at the cytokine storm, which is just a very overactive immune system. It kind of skewed what a company was doing in that area. You had companies that really had no experience in that immune system cytokine storm, regulating that. So companies looking at SARS, influenza, and sepsis. So what that created was a huge gulf in valuations. You had companies that really kept to what they were good at, being valued at 30 million, with a very healthy portfolio of clinical stage assets. And then you have the company that suddenly decided to jump on that COVID bandwagon, being valued at 200 million with nothing in the clinic, which was hugely challenging for investors. And albeit we've seen some of the re-rating, it's still somewhat difficult. Second point there, I think the big clinical trial raise days are still yet to return, given the wider economic backdrop. You know, the days of a small cap biotech company raising 20, 50 million to progress into phase 2, phase 3, that binary risk appetite is not there, and we don't see that returning for some time yet. And of course, we are battling with the element of cheap on market, a lot of valuations being depressed given the current market, and we do have a high interest rate environment, which is making equities less enticing for investors. Sarah mentioned at the start around the steep patent cliff looming in the market. This is where we have drugs that are being opened up. So it's really the initial developer no longer has sole ownership on that. There are distributors coming up providing lower priced generic alternatives. It really, I mean, the EY Beyond Borders report is a very interesting read. If you wanted to skim through that, it is, you know, huge amounts. We have 200 billion in annual product sales expected to be lost. But also with the kind of depressing point of that in large pharma, it also does really provide great opportunity for young, dynamic and innovative biotech companies to try and address that. So I think despite the market doldrums of last year, we are cautiously optimistic. We are starting to see a lot of interest coming back in the private sphere for UK biotech funding, and also on the public side as well. So it's slowly but surely, and we are starting to see some more activity on the public markets as well. And I think what's underpinning that shift, and really the bulk of my conversation here today is around what are the kind of the key advancements in technology that's currently disrupting the sector as we know it. So next slide, please. So these are really the two areas that we see is quite key and pivotal that's going on within the healthcare sector right now. And AI is a very interesting one. So, you know, we all know drug discovery is incredibly slow and expensive, takes on average 15 years, $2 billion to make a small molecule drug. And that road to get there is fraught with pitfalls. So about 70% of phase 2 trials, 50% of phase 3 trials fail for various reasons. And really, at essence, that process is one of trial and error. And I, you know, love always talking about Alexander Fleming. You know, the idea of him accidentally letting his petri dishes gather mold in turn actually led to the breakthrough of penicillin. And albeit the R&D sector has come on leaps and bounds, and then that element of trying to find which molecules work by putting together is still effectively one of trial and error. So this is where artificial intelligence coming in. If we're speeding up that process, making it more efficient and accurate, it is going to be hugely transformative in terms of reducing the cost, reducing the timelines. And Morgan Stanley there, I've got a couple of points. They're very, very bullish around that right now. I'd say a couple of years ago, this was still really quite academic, but until now, we're starting to see, you know, that really starting to work in practice. You know, big huge companies in this area such as Cytoreason and Benevolent AI are really doing great work with Pharma, developing quite advanced disease models to help companies better understand how these diseases develop, and then the companies can kind of come up with potential treatment approaches and test those against that. So, you know, the guys later on, Poolbeg and hVIVO would perhaps give a bit more information about how that's working in practice. But, you know, there's one, Sanofi and Atomwise are applying AI for screening certain small molecules. You know, Atomwise has a library of 3 trillion compounds that Sanofi is using, and it's really quite incredible when you see that breadth of data being used. And I think beyond drug discovery, AI is not going to be contained just within drug discovery, more looking at the service aspect of it. So a clinical research organization that's designing clinical trials, you can have the best drug in the world, but if it's a poorly designed trial, then unfortunately it will fail for the wrong reasons. So it's not just in drug discovery AI, it's right across from discovering the drugs and then testing the drugs and designing the drugs through clinical research organisations. Second point, it's still quite scary. You can see there that the NHS is going through a huge amount of digital transformation right now. Very expensive, and you can see some of the depressing stats around the COVID waiting times and how they compare against pre-pandemic levels. Clinical decision support is a key priority for the NHS, so we're looking at reducing that backlog. That means you're getting referrals or unwarranted and inappropriate referrals at GP surgeries, ending up at the hospital, causing huge backlogs in wait time. So there's a number of companies out there that are looking to reduce the burden on the NHS, both at the GP level and also at the hospital level. And this all comes from there's a number of trials out there using various wearables and medical devices which patients can submit their key biometric data remotely to a GP surgery, and there has been areas of having more patient compliance if they're managing to do it themselves. But NHS, as we all know, it's great once you're in. It's got that preferred suppliers. There's very high barriers to entry, but there are problems in growing those revenues, because we all know that the bureaucracy surrounding the NHS is notoriously slow. Next slide, please. So just to wrap up on a brief summary, I think we're all of the thinking that drug discovery has fundamentally changed. It's no longer a buzzword around a therapeutic area. Drug discovery is changing regardless of the disease that you're trying to cure, and artificial intelligence is really driving that. And Hybridan recently did a very in-depth report looking at where investors can get exposure to this area. That can be found on our website, hybridan.com, under sector reviews. And there's a number of great and really innovative small cap companies that are doing great strides in this, and you're hearing from two of them in a moment. Third point is again, don't repeat the same mistakes in 2020 with these so-called COVID companies. It's always important to invest in businesses, not in technology. And what I mean by that is, does the business behind the buzzword, so does the business operate as a standalone entity without AI? So is AI being utilized to enhance what the company is already doing? If it's AI is just a standalone offering, there's nothing behind it, perhaps steer clear. Again, this perfect storm going in the healthcare sector right now with that steep patent cliff looming. Big Pharma will be scrabbling around trying to really replenish that stock of really best in class or first in class of molecules which do command that price premium. And just my last point is really what I started on. I think that I can't see those days of raising 30-50 million, getting through the clinic to phase 3. I think where the sweet spot of where companies are going to succeed is when they're looking to do a licensing deal at the phase 1, phase 2 level, so it's slightly de-risked. And again, very important to when companies are saying that they want to do these licensing deals, looking at the management's experience of when they've got a licensing deal in the past, because it's a very different skill set to actually developing a successful model than it is to actually selling one. And that's it for me. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Many thanks, Niall. Now, I read that sectoral review, which we could find on Hybridan.com, and you've been having a lot of conversations with the industry at large, not just with the companies that are featured. So from your research and the conversations that you've been having, is the UK now recognised as a centre of excellence for healthcare solutions and innovation?
I think that really, we've always talked around that for a number of years. And I think what cemented our position around that was COVID, really, and the task force and the speed of getting from innovation to commercialization. That certainly happened 3 years ago. And again, it's not academic on the AI piece. There are amazing companies out there being spun out of universities, and companies who are in drug discovery, they don't want to mess around wasting time using traditional methods. That's why they're latching onto these AI companies. And these AI companies are demanding, they're commanding quite a hefty price premium. 70 million up front for some of these deals that they're partnering. So it's no longer academic. It's no longer pie in the sky stuff. This is the big deals are happening with AI and pharma companies.
Okay, you do have me worried though. Is the success of companies in this space completely reliant on licensing deals, because you're suggesting that that's the pathway, the gateway through which they have to progress?
I think so, Sarah, because it's very hard for your generalist investor to understand the science of the drug. Our average UK investor doesn't really come from a medical background, not whether that's a professional investor, a retail investor, or a small cap fund manager. They may nod when they're talking about the latest RNA therapeutic or getting in between biological pathways, but it's very difficult for us to understand the success of that. And the kind of the badge of success there is a licensing deal from a big pharma company, and has the management team who are running those companies saying, we're going to get a licensing deal. Have they done it before? Which is, it's never a prerequisite that it's going to happen again, but it's certainly a big tick that they know how to handle those conversations.
Okay, and no doubt this will be a conversation that we're having throughout this webinar. Niall, thank you very much indeed. Niall Pearson there, the head of corporate broking and sales at Hybridan.com, and I urge you to go and read that sectoral review. In fact, they've got quite a few sectoral reviews. You just go to the right-hand side and the tab is there. So, with a 95% global share in the human challenge data market, the scale, quality, and diversity of hVIVO's disease models is unrivaled in the world. Listed on AIM and Euronext, the market cap is £132 million, and the chief executive is Yamin Mo Khan. Mo, to most of us.
Thank you very much. Let me just get the slide up and running. There we go. Hopefully everyone can see that. So yeah, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you guys are. So very pleased to be presenting here at this special event. Most of you may know who we are and what we do, but some of you may be new to our company. So I thought the best thing to do is really talk about, one, who we are, what we do, what we've done, and what we plan to do in the future, because I think those are the key factors that I think will lead you guys to make a decision on how interested you are in our company. And if you want to hear more about us, I'm sure there's lots of different channels you can go to, and we'll be happy to answer any inbounding requests that you may have. The statutory disclaimer. So we are a company that conducts human challenge trials. We have two subsidiaries. hVIVO is the kind of the main business that runs the human challenge trials. We also have a second subsidiary called Venn Life Sciences. Venn Life Sciences has a presence in Breda in the Netherlands, as well as in Paris in France. And what they do is they conduct early clinical development services. So they work on things like clinical services, non-clinical services. They also work on PK and CMC. So basically the early part of the clinical trial pathway, and they help in getting their clients, biotech and big pharma to get to the next step. hVIVO solely focuses on the human challenge trials. So I'll talk a little bit about what human challenge trials are, but our main location is in QMB, which is Queen Mary Bioscience Park in Whitechapel. We also have another facility across the road in Whitechapel Hotel, as well as the screen site in Plumbers Row. We have an additional site in Manchester for screening healthy volunteers who take part in our clinical trial. But we are hoping that we will be consolidating our location at a new facility in Canary Wharf come mid next year. So those are the kind of the main locations and the main breadth. One of the key things I do want to point out is that as of this year, Venn Life Sciences and hVIVO are working together seamlessly on delivering the human challenge trials. So Venn Life Sciences, for example, design the protocol or the instruction manual of how to run the clinical trial. hVIVO recruits the healthy volunteers, they treat the healthy volunteers, and the Venn Life Sciences colleagues actually collect the data, analyze the data, and produce the final, what's called the clinical study report to our clients for them to make the decision on what they want to do next. So that's kind of the overall summary of who we are and where we are. So what is a human challenge trial? Well, human challenge trial is fairly a niche proof of concept that we are able to sell to our clients, both biotechs and pharma, whereby we are intentionally infecting an individual with a pathogen prior to running a trial. So here you can see a really nice flow chart. So you have a placebo and you have an active. So typically what we would do is, let's say we take 100 healthy volunteers, and if it's a vaccination study, we will give 50 of them the active vaccine, 50 of them will be given the placebo vaccine. 30 days later, they'll be admitted into quarantine and they will be inoculated, in other words, exposed to the virus we are studying. In other words, the virus against which the vaccine is supposedly working against. Then they will remain in quarantine. So they're stayed in a single ensuite room for around 10 days. And we collect data on these guys multiple times every day. So we know exactly the profile of mechanism of action of the viral infection, as well as how well the vaccine is working. So in this case, you can see that in the vaccine arm, the intensity of the infection is lower, as well as the duration. So in this profile, of course, the vaccine is working. The reason why we do this is because this is a much faster and a much more efficient way of actually determining whether your vaccine or antiviral works. The other option is to recruit tens of thousands of patients and vaccinate half of them with placebo and half with the active drug, and then wait for a sufficient sample of them to get infected before you can determine whether your vaccine works or not. So a case study, for example, was the COVID vaccine for Pfizer. 40,000 people were recruited, 20,000 were given the active vaccine, 20,000 were given placebo. And then about 6 months later, out of the 40,000, 200 became infected. And out of the 200, 180 were in the placebo arm and 20 were in the vaccine arm. So that's how Pfizer deduced that they were able to reduce the infection rate from 180 to 20. Now, for us to be able to replicate that efficacy data, it would require 400 people, not 40,000. This is not to say that you still don't have to do the phase 3. Of course, you still have to run the phase 3 trial for safety, if nothing else. But the key component of the challenge trial is it's able to give our clients a very early, a very fast, and a relatively cheap way to determine the efficacy of their product before they spend the big money and go into phase 3. So what have we done this year? So this slide basically gives you a summary of some of the financial parameters we've been able to achieve. So we've seen a good growth in the last 18 months. So the first half of this year, we recognized just over £27 million in revenue. That's around a 52% year-on-year increase. We've also been able to gain EBITDA margin of around 19%. That's more than double the EBITDA from the first half of 2022. And we've also got a significant cash pile of just over £31 million. So financially, we're very strong. And later on, I'll go through our projections of what we intend to do in the upcoming future. With regards to our operational excellence, so as Sarah mentioned, we have over 90% of the market. We've done 70 human challenge trials across 4,000 healthy volunteers. Now, just to give you some context, we believe that the next competitor has done around 5 human challenge trials in total. So there's no one else in the globe that has been able to compete against the number of challenge trials we're running or the variety of the challenge models we have. In fact, we're establishing 4 new challenge models this year and next year. Now, a challenge model is basically a new purified virus that we are able to use in a challenge trial. And again, our competitors have 2, or one of them, in fact, has only 1. So we are really ahead of the market, and we are prepared for future demand that we believe is coming with regards to mucosal vaccines. So these are vaccines that you take orally or you inhale them, as well as doing trials in combo vaccines. So these are basically vaccines that are effective against more than one virus. So for example, in the next few years, we envisage that you will be able to get one vaccine that will cover your annual flu shot and your annual COVID. But of course, there are several other opportunities with regards to RSV and HMPV and other viruses. One of our key advantages over the market is our FluCamp platform, which we use to recruit our healthy volunteers. So during the first half of this year, for example, we screened 74,000 individuals registered on the FluCamp website, expressing their interest in taking part in the clinical trial. We have around 40 people dedicated to this. We have our own call center. We've got a very strong team that we've revamped towards the end of last year to be able to ensure that we're able to continue to recruit and meet the demand of the increasing market. Operationally, well, we will be moving to a new facility, and I'll talk about that later on. We also have new models, the HMPV, the human metapneumovirus, as well as the flu B, both coming live hopefully in 2024. And we've been able to sign our first contract in repurposing the healthy volunteers who are ineligible to take part in challenge trials to phase 1 trials with third parties. So one of our goals is continue to diversify our offerings. So this is one of those examples. Another example is, for example, we're conducting phase 2, phase 3 field-based trials, and we're also expanding on the laboratory services we're offering to our clients not related to challenge trials. We've upgraded our guidance for 2023 from £53 million to 55, and we've also increased our EBITDA guidance from, we said it was mid to high teens, to now over 19%. And our contracting weighted order book is very healthy, sitting at £78 million. And we have full visibility for the rest of this year and the first half of 2024. So the demand for these trials continue to increase. So you can see that the number of trials we are actually conducting has increased year on year, as well as the number of subjects required per trial. In other words, our clients are asking us to recruit more healthy volunteers per trial because they look to do more and more with their data. So I think one of the key components I want to address really is Canary Wharf. So we always had intention to grow and build a bigger and a better facility in late 2024. But the demand was such that our clients had basically funded the majority of the new facilities. So we have received funding from a few of our major clients who are wanting to run their trials in a much more accelerated manner than we would have been able to do in our current facility. So the new facility at Canary Wharf, we've signed the lease. It's a 50-bed facility. The 10-year cost is identical to what we are currently paying in our current facilities. So in fact, we will be getting more beds, more space for the same cost that we are currently incurring. We signed a 10-year lease with a 5-year break with a rental cap. So we have a very good way of predicting our future costs as we move forward. The other key point also is that we've already triggered our lease break in the current facility. So there is minimum overlap on cost with regards to the current leases and also the future Canary Wharf leases. And the other key factor in this decision was also because we have a very healthy outlook with regards to how much work that we have already contracted that we haven't done yet. Financially, of course, on some of the key parameters I've already mentioned, we will be much better in conducting our trials with higher efficiency. So we will be looking long-term to improve our profit margin, thereby our EBITDA. So from our point of view, that we were able to take advantage of a circumstance where we have funding from our clients, we have a facility that's fit for purpose and at the right price available right now. It will also, of course, improve our ESG, our company culture, and bring the whole team together into one place. As an example, we're currently running our quarantine facilities in 2 buildings across 4 floors. We will be now moving into a single floor in 1 building. The order book, as I mentioned, the order book sits at the weighted 78 million. So we look at every contract we sign and we assess what the probability is that project will definitely go ahead to the end. And we sign that probability and we calculate what the weighted order book is, and that we report on that. Of course, each client that signs with us pays around a 50% upfront non-refundable fee. So if they were to cancel, we will still get to keep that non-refundable fee. The diversity between biotech and pharma continues. In fact, if I take a step back and look at the sales pipeline, we have diversity across different regions, so US, Europe, as well as Asia Pac, biotech and pharma, and across multiple challenge agents that we are currently running. So overall, I'm very kind of happy that we're able to report such a high visibility as we move into 2024. We did give an upgrade guidance on our numbers for this year in our interim reported a couple of weeks ago. So £55 million in revenue, 19% EBITDA margin. We will look to continue to increase our revenue as we move forward, as well as at least keep the EBITDA constant, if not improve that too. So we're not looking to sacrifice EBITDA for growth. That's not the way we want to operate. Additionally, we've been able to announce a nominal dividend. So this will be an annual nominal dividend that we'll be able to afford, considering we have such a large reserve of cash. And in 2024, we will also be looking at potentially conducting some M&A activity and diversifying our portfolio of services for our customers. You're pleased to hear this is my final slide. So the investment case, I think, speaks for itself. We have excellent performance. So this is the third half-year period we've seen a growth in both in revenue and EBITDA, and also the order book. So I'm really pleased that not only are we able to actually generate the order book, but then actually conduct the work and recognize that as revenue on an ongoing basis at a pretty good margin. We made several changes in our sales strategy, in our operational delivery models, to be able to increase the leverage with regards to how many volunteers we are putting into quarantine. And we will hope that we'll continue to build on that and improve that as we go forward. We're also growing to building new revenue streams. So we mentioned the field trials, the repurposing of healthy volunteers, also adding in the phase 2, phase 3 trials, and finally, with Venn Life Sciences, adding new expertise such as ATMP and gene and cell therapy expertise. As we look forward, as I mentioned, rest of the year fully contracted. First half of 2024 fully contracted. We're looking to book into the space in second half of 2024, and we also have the nominal dividend. So, in summary, we are in a very strong position. We are a market leader, but we're not becoming complacent. We're looking to find new and different ways of improving our human challenge trials. We're also looking to diversify our portfolio of challenge trial offerings, as well as building on additional non-challenge services. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mo, and the questions are coming in. So to quote you, you said hVIVO is prepared for future demand. So I've just seen the slide there for your order book, and I'm thinking, wow, that's great. But at the same time, I was thinking, that has to be a problem. You know, do you have the capacity? I know that Canary Wharf is coming on stream, but that, you know, do you have the capacity to honor that workload in terms of talent, laboratory space, water coolers?
No, it's a really good problem to have, right? So the fact that we have the order book, and now we're thinking about how do we convert that into revenue. So absolutely. So we have a very flexible model with regards to our resourcing. So we have a permanent staff proportion, and then we also have bank staff. So we can actually flex the bank staff up and down as and when there's a requirement. So I've got no concerns with regards to the staff side. With regards to the volunteer delivery, as I mentioned, we implemented a new team. Almost the whole team has changed over the last 18 months. So we are able to deliver much better than we have been in the past. So we changed the way we are advertising our FluCamp brand. Also with regards to our new screening facility in Manchester, that is delivering now. We've also implemented a new CRM system to manage our volunteers. So that's the second concept with regards to converting the order book into revenue. The third one is, of course, the number of beds we have. So this is one of the main drivers for the move to Canary Wharf. So for me, the three constraints with regards to future growth. So one is, can we recruit the healthy volunteers? Do we have enough beds to be able to treat these healthy volunteers? And the third is the order book. And we're seeing kind of an even increase in all three aspects. So I'm very confident that we will be able to deliver the order book into revenue. And we've already seen this in the last 3 halves, that we have shown significant increases in revenue, and we continue to build the order book.
So there is a revenue question coming from John, who says, how do you plan to expand the revenue from the database with the results of all the challenge studies? He goes further, he says, I believe you already rent access to Poolbeg to apply AI techniques to it, but do you have plans to expand that revenue source by renting to other companies or even selling?
So yes, the agreement with Poolbeg is non-exclusive. So we are always looking at additional opportunities with regards to giving access to other pharmaceutical and biotech companies. So we're always on the lookout for that. But for me, the key thing is the human challenge trial conduct itself, because that will determine the future of the company. All the other aspects I talked about, the lab, the field-based trials, the access to the data, they are great to have as add-ons and potential upside if someone has some success in that. But the key thing on a day-to-day basis is making sure we continue to build on the human challenge trial revenue.
So I think that 50% of your work already comes from North American customers. You've identified the Asia Pacific region as a key long-term growth area. So I'm just wondering how you're progressing with marketing the business there and what kind of reaction you've already had.
Yeah, so we hired a salesperson to focus on Europe and Asia Pac. And in fact, we have already signed a significant size contract with a client from Asia Pac. So we've already seen success. We know there are a number of biopharma companies in that region interested in some of the viruses that we have models for. So I see this will be a long-term growth area. I don't envisage it beating the US, for example, or even Europe, because the market there, of course, is bigger, but it's already contributing to our order book and to our revenue.
Okay, well, finally, congratulations, Mo, for being shortlisted for Entrepreneur of the Year at the AIM Awards 2023. We'll find out how well you've done when the results are announced on Thursday, the 12th of October. But I understand that you now have a flight to catch. So thank you very much. It's very busy indeed.
Thank you for having me on. Take care.
You're welcome. Well, of course, you are all winners in my eyes, just as the next chief executive who's coming on. It's hVIVO's sister company and spin-off. It's Poolbeg Pharma. It's a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company targeting diseases with a high unmet medical need. 2 regulatory updates this week, very important, because investors have learned more about how the company is strengthening, protecting, and validating its intellectual property protection of its portfolio of assets. Chief Executive Dr. Jeremy Skillington no doubt will reference that, and he's going to tell us about the company overall. Thank you.
Super. Sarah, thank you so much for the introduction. And I do want to thank Niall as well as Mo as well, who I think helped set the scene for the Poolbeg story, certainly around the AI angle that we're working rapidly on right now. And then secondly, from Mo's standpoint, you're right, we demerged or spun out of hVIVO 2 years ago, so I have a very good close working relationship with them. So from that standpoint, we have overlapping interests, let's say, in the infectious disease space. I will start by just kind of grounding, for those who are maybe unfamiliar with Poolbeg. We're listed on the London stock market, as well as the OTC QB in the US, headquartered in London with operations actually here in Dublin, where I'm presenting from today. We are host a virtual model, so we have a network of experts and contract research groups that we contract to do our work for us. So that keeps our our overheads quite low, and you'll see that was I guess a strategic decision from the start, just around being capital light. We've recently expanded our scientific advisory board, and by Professor Brendan Buckley joining on as a non-exec director as well. So again, very strong management team. And I think from a very strong cash position, 14.1 million, our recent interims a few weeks ago as well. And our focus right now is on business development that completes the business model for the company. I do want to highlight a few. I won't go through everything in detail here, but we've made a lot of progress over the last 2 years since we IPO'd. But I do want to highlight 2023 in particular, where we completed our first clinical trial, the LPS Human Challenge Study. And this was using a small molecule immunomodulator to block an inflammatory response. So we got terrific data from that. So as you'll see, we feel that there's great use or purpose for this molecule now in many different diseases, which I'll talk about. We did do an expansion into oncology, starting in infectious diseases, again, from our hVIVO heritage, branching into oncology, and I explain that shortly, the rationale for it and the good medical need and scientific underpinnings. So again, looking into new indications there, we are progressing, to Niall's point, into our AI programs have completed the early stages of identifying novel drugs and targets for 2 infectious diseases, RSV and influenza, and we're progressing those. And again, it was terrific to use the AI collaborators that we have to interrogate the data that was generated at hVIVO and coming up with new novel drug targets, as I say, and novel drugs ultimately. And also in parallel, we have a collaboration around oral delivery of number 1 vaccines, which I'll touch upon today, but not in too great a detail. But quite interestingly, oral delivery of a GLP-1 agonist, which have been particularly in the news of late when it comes to treating diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular disease. So these are all areas of significant high medical need. I will dwell, just for a short period of time on this to remind people the business model is identifying high potential opportunities, driving into major value inflection points, and we've always talked about that as early human clinical data, and then partner with pharma, and then reinvesting back into the company. So we kind of start that cycle. So I think in the last 2 years, we've been quite successful in the first 2 steps, and obviously transitioning now into partnering with pharma and biotech, generating a lot of interest there. And I think we're in very good shape in that regard, given the clinical data that we have earlier this year and the outputs from our AI studies. And we see this as a portfolio approach. We have many programs, but any success in one will drive the value of the company going forward. Again, we're very clever with the programs that we bring in and maybe select internally to drive forward. We've got a very good diligence team to drive those forward. And I will highlight that, again, to extend our cash run, we're very active in non-dilutive funding, getting grant funding, for example, with 1 success under our belt thus far. And of course, the ambition to have several more. So again, the team is terrific and fantastic to drive these programs forward, lots of knowledge in the space, etc. And I think we're hitting that sweet spot now where pharma, there was talk about the patent cliff, where pharma are desperate to bring in new programs and into their pipelines to drive them forward. And we see that Poolbeg can be a major provider of programs for pharma. And it was talk about our patent portfolios, obviously protecting our programs. Yes, we got two noteworthy news releases this week. One about the conclusion, let's say, of an opposition, very favorable to Poolbeg, and then obviously getting a granted patent in Japan. So moving forward on many fronts there, and of course being attractive to pharma. This is our pipeline. I will talk about some, but not all of these programs in the interest of time. POLB 001 is our lead program, and we've had a lot of discussion and focus on that in the past. The initial focus on severe influenza, we're still pushing forward in that direction. As I mentioned, our clinical trial was successful this year. So again, we see opportunities, being opportunistic into other areas of where you need a small molecule immunomodulator. And we talk about the oncology later on. 2 other programs, again, I won't touch upon today, late stage clinical research. But I think what's generated a lot of interest recently is the AI programs. And again, I'll touch upon these later on, but we've made terrific progress in identifying novel drug targets and drugs for influenza and RSV. And then I'll touch upon the oral delivery. So again, a very robust pipeline, which I think will bring significant value to the company in the very near future. So 001, as I say, we see multiple opportunities across multiple diseases. We see that P38 MAP kinase as a key driver of what's called cytokine release syndrome. It's where you've got an overly robust inflammatory response in response to a trigger. Depending on a trigger, could be influenza, and that's where we're going after severe influenza, other infections, and it was known in the COVID-19 pandemic that severe disease was having the cytokine storm, the cytokine release syndrome. But as mentioned, we're also looking in the oncology sector where You have some oncology therapeutics where they see fantastic efficacy, but there's these side effects where the immune system, again, as I say, is overreacting to the presence of the oncology drug. So we feel that P38 MAP kinase can play a role in here. And again, just to be clear, when we're in the oncology sector, we're not doing these long 6, 12, 18-month clinical trials. These, again, are very short clinical trials to generate, as I say, kind of control this cytokine release syndrome using our small molecule inhibitor. And that's generated a good deal of interest from pharma of late, who recognize that CRS, cytokine release syndrome, is an issue with their drugs. So on the bottom right, just to explain in a cartoon format, what you're seeing here, number one, immune cells activation by a trigger. You get cytokine releases, that's your immune system stirring up, as it were. And again, that triggers, in some cases, this kind of downward spiral where you're getting a lot more cytokines than you need. And that causes a breakdown of tissues and organs, etc. But we believe that POD001 or P38 MAP kinase can block that system. And again, allowing the patients to heal and recover quicker. From a clinical standpoint, again, it's always important to get clinical data, to have clinical data in our discussions with pharma. And I won't go through all of these in great detail, but suffice it to say that we have a small molecule immunomodulator that we can deliver orally, that gets into systemic circulation, that gets inside the cells, that finds the target, the P38 MAP kinase, that blocks the activation of P38 MAP kinase, and then blocks the downstream effects of that, which would have been this increase in cytokines and immune cell recruitment, etc. So again, I won't go through each of these, but we're so happy to see the data when we got it. Now we have a good understanding of the dose that we need to achieve what we want. And of course, the next step now is to say is having that in our hands. We have a clinical study report completed. We've got a data room all populated. So in discussions with pharma about applying this new knowledge and new understanding of the drug into these situations where you need to block that inflammatory response. So again, very excited to be at this stage right now. Just a few words on the oncology side. I say it's a little bit, a departure, let's say, from our, infectious disease heritage, as I mentioned. But we see, as I say, CAR T is a good example where these, they're activated T cells, they're gotten from the patients directly themselves. They're engineered to go after and attack and kill cancer cells within that patient. But one of the unfortunate, unwanted side effects is that up to 95% of these patients, while they're trying to deal with their cancer, also have these dramatic side effects where they're having this cytokine release syndrome, which causes additional challenges and additional issues. And I will say it puts additional strain on the healthcare system because they have to remain in hospital, ready for treatment if it's needed, and obviously take treatment when it is. So there's, as I say, put strains on the healthcare system, particularly in the UK and the NHS, we know is challenged as it is. So again, we feel that we have a product that will address this issue. And as you see here from the bottom left, the CRS management, and as I say, this is in response to other drugs. We feel that the market is still significant, growing to 44.6 billion by 2033. Which again, in 10 years' time, there's a great market there with very little solutions. So we feel we have potential here. So we're in the process now of clinical trial design to generate that proof of concept data in that oncology setting. And I think there's a good deal of interest from pharma to explore that alongside us. The bottom right here, I just touch upon some of the key CAR T cell therapies. Again, these are marketed. Again, to do terrific work, with, they work effectively in the patient setting. But as I say, dealing with these side effects is a desire from pharma and indeed the healthcare system. So we see great potential here for 001. Again, I'll switch a little bit now into the AI. Again, that's kind of causing a lot of kind of excitement in the industry or with the company of late. And again, touching upon Mo's comments, you've seen this graph previously, and touching upon Niall's as well, that we have this unique data set. Nobody else has this data set. Mo talked about doing clinical trials in the field where you have people, and when they show up in hospitals, they're already sick. But we have data sets from these patients when they're healthy, after you infect them, and then watch the disease progression. And these are kind of twice daily sampling. We're able to look at their gene expression, their protein expression, their viral load, looking at signs and symptoms, temperature, all these huge multi-parameter data sets that are so clean, so perfect for AI to then interrogate and come up with new solutions and understand what happens when the disease is progressing and how the immune system responds. So again, this is a very quick and effective and reduces the risk, again, of the point that Niall made earlier on, how AI can help, and obviously reduce spend because we're very, as a cash conscious. So I'll touch briefly on the 2 collaborations we had with our colleagues at 1-3 and Hybridan. But I just want to highlight, these terrific companies who have a large amount of knowledge and experience and expertise in the AI analysis world, this data analysis, this bioinformatics. They take the unique data set. They include, interestingly, public data sets that are out there. And then they build these disease models. Again, it's understanding what goes on from almost an hour-to-hour standpoint or day-to-day standpoint of how the disease is progressing and how the immune system responds. And after analysis, coming up with novel drug targets and treatments. And what got us to this point is the data set. And again, thank you to our colleagues at hVIVO, who we licensed the data set from, but the RSV and the influenza. But when we talked to the 2 kind of key leads of the companies at Hybridan and 1-3, you see how impressed they were with the data set, and how valuable it was to them, and of course to us, in what comes out the other end. So what comes out of that now, as I say, I'll be brief on this, but always an issue, these respiratory viral infections. I think there's been a microscope on respiratory viral infections post-pandemic. So there's still a need, a desire to come up with better improvements, better solutions. RSV is still an issue globally. So we're looking at 177,000 hospitalizations in the US alone, with 14,000 deaths. And there's always a need for new drug treatments. So again, a rapid analysis of our data within a short period of time, the 14, 15 months, 1-3 were able to identify novel drug candidates that now are progressing into lab-based validation to further demonstrate that, out of the in silico, out of the computer, that these work in vitro, in a lab setting. And then Hybridan, most impressively, again, they have existing collaborations with the likes of Pfizer, for example, who believe in their AI platform. But again, influenza, as we know, is still an issue. 1 billion cases globally. The vaccines are, semi-effective, so there's always that need for other treatments. And as I mentioned, Hybridan have a multitude of impressive clients, and of course, including Poolbeg with our impressive data set. So they too just recently identified targets, again, through a very laborious review analysis of the data sets, as I say, from 130 patients in the influenza study. And again, we're very excited with the targets identified and then moving those through to proof of concept. So very exciting time for the company. Lastly, on the partnerships, I won't touch on the oral vaccines, but we hope to have validation of the encapsulation technology very, very soon. Again, this is non-dilutively funded by the Irish government. And then on the right, quite excitingly, that GLP-1 agonists, huge market, expected to exceed 150 billion by 2031. These are typically given through injections, but now we think we have a technology through our partners at AnaBio where we can give it orally and see the same effects. So we're in clinical trial planning right now for that, and get that started and finished in 2024. So my last slide, just to wrap up. Again, we have a fantastic team here with an exceptional track record in the industry, flagging the recent Amrit acquisition, co-founded by Cathal Friel, our chairman, and Ian O'Connell, our CFO. Again, focusing on BD right now. And again, targeting large markets, infectious diseases, yes, it's there and it'll always be around. CRS is relatively new, but again, a significant issue in GLP-1, of course. And again, as I say, we've got a cash runway to it's quite healthy to kind of get us there, and of course tap into other non-dilutive funding opportunities too. And on the right-hand side, again, multiple near-term value inflection points as we progress with the programs coming forward. I won't go into each of these in detail, but you'll see the news flow as it comes. As I say, we're just to keep the markets updated on the progress. But I'm very excited about all of these. But getting moving into the oncology sector is very exciting. The AI-driven targets for the influenza program, and of course GLP-1. And as I say, as a company, we're focused then on the partnering aspect now that we have these data in hand to get pharma moving and excited. So it's a fantastic time for the company. We've progressed very well. Very proud of the team here who work incredibly hard to drive the programs and obviously drive value. And of course, happy to take any questions from the audience. And thank you again for attending.
And a lot achieved since that IPO in July 2021, Jeremy. So you'd anticipated that final slide, you'd anticipated the partnership questions that have come in.
Yep.
But the first question, with the favourable resolution of the patent challenge 2 days ago for 001, is there any other potential blocks to a partnership or even sale of 001? or are you waiting results from the oncology trials before this is considered?
That's a good question. It's kind of interesting, and we've always stated, in our release. I mean, it's not unusual in the industry that patents are challenged. There's, with this resolution, you're right. That removes a roadblock. Any kind of questions. I think it kind of clears the way. I think the severe influenza, we can progress into that, and I think there's, they see the role that P38 MAP kinase can play. Now we know we have a safe and effective drug to block P38 MAP kinase. We're happy with that. The oncology, I'm not going to say kind of supersedes, but I do think from a partnering standpoint that there may be greater interest in the oncology side of things, but we're pushing forward on both fronts. And we've always said this, that from an influenza standpoint, we can do separate deals where that will be, say, an intravenous and IV administered drug, whereas for the oncology, that'll be orally delivered. So you can structure deals to kind of, generate, make the pie bigger, as it were. But as I say, we'll carry on those discussions in parallel, because I think there's value on both fronts.
Now, I know that over the past 2 years, you've been laser focused on building value. And Harry's asked, given the current economic environment, are you concerned that you won't get as much as before or as expected for Poolbeg's assets?
It's a fair question. I think that, again, going back to Niall's comment about the patent cliff, Pharma realized that, drug development, number one, marketing, for example, is global. They want to kind of go and expand. And, if they see an asset they like, if it's in a competitive situation, they will, write checks to get it in-house. So, and I think that, Pharma wouldn't be too keen to, lose a deal, for the sake of, $1 million or 2 or 3 or 4, like these are kind of smaller numbers compared to their bottom lines, as it were. But if they like the asset, they will pay. And we try and create some competitive tension in that. And as we mentioned in the oncology setting, there's a number of pharmas have products where CRS is an issue. So of course, we're talking to all of them. So yes, it's a good question, but I think, somewhat, pharma, big pharma in particular, I won't say are immune to the current environment. They're very, cost conscious, and particularly with the issues in the US around their kind of Inflation Reduction Acts, etc. But I think pharma, from my experience, 20 years in the industry, if they see a product they like, they will pay for it.
Okay, so irrespective of the current economic climate, the infectious disease market continues to grow. Of course, that's the market you're targeting, a bit like the question I asked Mo earlier on. Does your company have the capacity to accommodate ambitions and results?
We do. As I say, we as a very strong management team, very knowledgeable, very experienced. When it comes to resources, we do contract, with a lot of, key opinion leaders, experts, contract research groups. And importantly, that keeps the overheads quite low. That, we don't have, extensive labs, for example. We contract with companies who can run the work for us. So I think we can, like in an accordion manner, we can expand as we need, we can contract as we need. That depends on the projects as we go moving forward. But we have got a terrific network of people who, I'm happy to say that they like working with us. They're happy to work with us. And as I say, we dip in and out as needed from that standpoint. So I'm not concerned about that too much. As I say, we can expand as needed.
Okay, so you were spun out of hVIVO. You're considered the sister company. Final question, what's the cost of the use of hVIVO's data? When does this agreement come to an end? Very market sensitive. Can you answer?
That's very good. Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. It was part of the demerger, and initially we did say it was a 30-month term. So it's anything after 30 months, then that'll be kind of worth a further discussion. So it's not like we have to give rights back after 30 months to the data generated. But as you've seen, I think, and maybe, I won't put Mo on the spot. I know he had to run, but I think we've done a terrific job with the data that they've shared with us. I think that, with the 2 AI collaborations, we're able to, take it, interrogate it, mine it for new and novel information using the AI, collaborations. So I think, they're happy, as to say, it's not that we just sat on it. So I think they'll, for future, we'll have this discussion about future data, but I think we have a terrific working relationship with the hVIVO team as well. And, as I say, we'll see, it's, even though we're sisters, we don't fight, so we'll see what the future holds. But as I say, I'm quite confident we'll continue our working relationship in a very strong way.
Very good. Very glad to hear there's no sibling rivalry. Jeremy, thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it's been a very busy fortnight for both companies. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. Thank you, the audience, for your questions and for your participation. And thank you to Niall from Hybridan as well, and from myself, Sophie, Amanda, and Tim from Master Investor. Thank you very much indeed. Do keep an eye out on upcoming events. We've got a webinar October the 4th, I believe, but you can check that out on there it is, 4th of October, UK property, trouble in paradise, or the perfect storm. It certainly is stormy out there. I hope you're safe and you're well. I understand the tree that was blocking the train line to Crewe has been moved. That's all for me. Thank you very much. I'll see you again.